Normally, when you see a company being quite upbeat against a backdrop that's been very negative for this sector or any company exposed to China, you might expect the shares to pop quite strongly, but it's a funny market at the moment.
Well, that's right. There's big uncertainty over this because a lot of what they're saying is backward looking, and they're saying in the near term now we're expecting a dip in sales in China. And you look at what happened this morning with Burberry, which issued a big profit warning, and you have to wonder what the future holds.
Well, Burberry seems to be the hardest hit of those that we've heard of so far out of Europe. Eric, what do you think? I mean, is their business model the most exposed to this kind of thing?
They've got a big exposure to China for sure. About 40% of their sales go to Chinese consumers, either on the mainland or overseas when they're doing trips overseas. And so they're one of the most heavily exposed for sure. They're certainly the first to make this kind of a dramatic warning in the luxury sector, but you've got to expect that others will be doing something similar.
Yeah, and really interesting insight into what this is doing to sales, admittedly at the luxury end of things in China. But they're giving us stats on what the impact's been, saying that of the stores that remain open, they've seen a decline of 70 to 80% in terms of sales in the past 2 weeks. If that's repeated across the sector, that's worrying.
It's shocking. It's a huge amount. I mean, they're basically saying people just aren't visiting these stores anymore, and it shows a lot of these kinds of high-end purchases are impulse buys. You go into the store, you buy, and all of a sudden, if you don't have people going to the stores, they're not making those decisions.
I mean, of course, I should say clearly the death toll of the virus much more worrying, but in terms of the impact on some of the businesses that we track daily with their exposure to China, this is clearly a big issue. Matt?
I just want to quickly say these might not be the kind of sales that will be made up after the virus is contained, right, Eric? I mean, because you mentioned that they're impulse purchases. You're not going to go through the airport and buy 2 scarves because you didn't buy one last month.
Well, that's the big question. I mean, analysts have been pretty sanguine about this so far, saying, you look at SARS and the experience back then, and a lot of the purchases did get made up. But the question is, how much of it is, as you said, kind of you're shopping while you're traveling. If you don't make that trip, you don't buy.